My sermon passage is Matthew 1, 18 to 25, and then it reads right into chapter 2, verses 1 to 12. It starts on page 835 of the Pew Bible. Now the birth of Jesus Christ took place in this way. When his mother Mary had been betrothed to Joseph, before they came together, she was found to be with child of the Holy Spirit. And her husband Joseph, being a just man and unwilling to put her to shame, resolved to divorce her quietly. But as he considered this, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David, do not fear to take Mary, your wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and his name shall be called Emmanuel, which means God with us. When Joseph woke from sleep, he did as the angel of the Lord commanded him. He took his wife, but knew her not until she had borne a son, and he called his name Jesus. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. And they told him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet, And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who will govern my people Israel. Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly, and ascertained from them what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, that I too may come and worship him. When they had heard the king, they went their way. And lo, the star which they had seen in the east went before them, till it came to rest over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, it says, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. The word of the Lord. May God grant us wisdom and courage for interpretation. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph have been in the news more than usual this pre-Christmas season. Nativity scenes have been real hot potatoes. And because I read this kind of news, so you don't have to, I'm going to talk about it some. But first, do y'all remember me wishing we had enough people to do not just one living nativity scene, but four? One for each of the four Gospels. Matthew. It would have been a small house with worn out Mary and Joseph and a toddler Jesus about 2 years old. That's what the gospel writer tells us in Matthew chapter 2, verse 10. And that's where the wise men, or the Magi, showed up with gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. I figured we could rent or borrow one of those backyard storage buildings, dress it up to look like a house looked 2,000 years ago, somehow make it look Bethlehem-y. And I don't know, me, Chris, OT, Cameron, Greg, Chuck, Skip, even Carl, we could all be wise men. Because Matthew does not say there were three wise men, let alone three kings. It says some kings brought three gifts. And also there was no sheep and no shepherds, not in Matthew's story. Mark's living nativity scene out here in the parking lot or the grass back behind it would just be a blank spot, because the Gospel of Mark says nothing at all about the birth of Jesus. Luke, Brother Luke, there's the manger and the shepherds out in their fields and the sheep and the heavenly host singing, all our most intimate, kid-like images. No wise men, though. John John's nativity scene would have to be an attempt at depicting the holy beating heart of the cosmos and Jesus Christ superstar with flashing lights, rapturous music, and I'd even approve a fog machine for that, like the big mega churches have, because the Gospel of John, as we know, says this about Jesus' origins in chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The light. So we'd have to have big, bright lights out there. And I am convinced that if we, or if any church in Oklahoma City did 4 living nativity scenes all at once, one based on each gospel, without mushing them up together into the one that everybody knows and loves, it would make the news. It might even make national news, because that's a seminary thing. Everyday people would freak out, because everyday people have this image of Jesus' nativity scene in their head, and it's got it all there at once, because that's just the way we tell it. Nothing wrong with any of that. But instead of that, we get this in the national news. From The Guardian, with some reporting by the Associated Press. And now it's kind of long, but I believe it's worth us all hearing it together in church here on the 4th Sunday of Advent, a few days before Christmas, because this is our safe place. Headline: The Holy Family is in hiding. Nativity scenes at U.S. churches pushed back on ICE. Displays include handcuffed baby Jesus and Mary wearing a gas mask in the wake of Trump's immigration crackdown. Satirical holiday displays mocking Donald Trump's aggressive immigration crackdown, portraying the newborn Jesus and his parents, Mary and Joseph, as victims of heavy-handed tactics by the Federal Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, ICE, have appeared across the United States. One striking retelling of the Christmas story at Lake Street Church in the Chicago suburb of Evanston features baby Jesus lying in a manger in the snow, but wrapped in the kind of thin foil blankets given out in emergencies and given out regularly as bedding to ICE detainees, and with his little wrists zip-tied. I couldn't even bring myself. That was my first sermon title, was Baby Jesus Zip-Tied. It's hard to even say that. And to see it would be shocking. And that's the point. The figure of Mary stands nearby just outside the church wearing a gas mask, which anti-ICE protesters have been wearing to protect against tear gas. She is flanked by figures of Roman soldiers, which the Bible depicts as having detained Jesus prior to his execution, but with those in the display now dressed in tactical vests labeled ICE. At another location in Chicago, urban village, Mary and Joseph are donkeys and shepherds and the wise men. See, it's all mixed up, bearing gifts in the traditional scene. Instead, there's a sign that says, due to ICE activity in our community, the Holy Family is in hiding. The displays are extensions of the prominent role taken in recent protests against the aggressive federal immigration enforcement by faith leaders, especially in Chicago and New York. Similar political statements are also being made at churches in other states. At St. Susanna Parish in Dedham, Massachusetts, the tiny figure of Christ was removed from its nativity scene, and in its place a hand-painted sign reading, ICE was here. The Catholic Church stood defiant despite complaints from leadership of the local archdiocese and of ICE, local media reported. According to some people behind the displays, portraying the ancient story of Christ's birth in a contemporary political frame helps bring attention to the Trump administration's agenda. They say that the Holy Family's status as refugees represents the real fears and experiences of families in their communities, including separation from loved ones and the deportation of working family members leading to loss of income. Christmas is a time, quote, when we have public art out on the lawn and we get an opportunity to say something, said Michael Wolf, senior minister at Lake Street. He said that Baptist congregation created another nativity scene previous year showing Jesus lying in rubble. It was, he said, a plea for peace in Gaza. During the Trump administration in 2018, parishioners at St. Susanna erected a display with baby Jesus constrained in a cage, replicating the president's policy at the time of separating migrant families and locking up children at the U.S.-Mexican border. Another year, they depicted Jesus' body floating in water polluted with plastic in a protest to highlight the climate crisis, which doesn't exist now, according to the federal government. St. Susanna is part of a multi-church refugee support committee that has worked with refugee families since 2019, helping them find housing, enroll in school, learn English, and to get jobs. Meanwhile, back at Evanston's United Methodist Church, the figure of Joseph blew down in a storm and was too damaged to be put back up, so a sign reads, "Joseph didn't make it." We hold this space to honor and remember all the victims of immigration enforcement terror. Jillian Westerfield, Associate Minister of Lake Street in Evanston, said critics either don't fully understand the message or they, quote, find it really challenging to their conscience and are lashing out at the art rather than engaging with what the actual message is, end quote, the end. So how's your life going? How's your family? Does your situation make you think of the usual bucolic manger scene with sweet little baby Jesus in the feed trough wrapped in swaddling clothes? Or does it seem more like some of those alternative nativity scenes? I mean, as in disrupted from what you expected or what you wanted. It doesn't take ice to wreck a family Christmas story. It happens every year. Somebody's uncle has too much spiked eggnog, gets pulled over and spends Christmas in jail, or worse. Somebody's Christmas lights get a short and burns their house down. Seems like every time I drive from here to anywhere on Christmas, there's a horrible, horrible story about a fire. And it's always started by the stuff that we do Christmas with. Or somebody gets sick at Christmas time and they're in the hospital. I did that myself. Spinal meningitis from just before Christmas of '72 for 9 days on into the new year. And it disrupted not only my immediate family, but 3 others. There was my own, my big sister and her family in Dallas, and my other big sister and her family in Fort Worth, and my church family. Everybody at First Baptist Church who was there when I was that Sunday before I got taken to the hospital had to get a shot or take pills for 2 weeks. They remember me. Disruption often comes and dysfunction often shows itself at Christmas time. So if your life in this season is not as pleasant as you expected or hoped, not as peaceful as a traditional nativity scene, if so, if it's a mess, if it's not perfect, if it's not a Hallmark movie, then you have at least a taste, a hint of what it was like at the original nativity scene. Your family has a hint of what it felt like to have been the Holy Family, baby Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, because that family was messed up. Baby born out of wedlock somewhere out in the sticks, in a feed trough, no less. Mama too young to really know what she was getting into. And Joseph, not sure who the father is, tangled up in what does honor require on one side and what will the neighbors think on the other. All the while they were living on the run as refugees. By the way, I've heard some people dispute that when they see the Holy Jesus, wait a minute. I've heard some people dispute that when they see the Holy Family labeled as refugees in one of those gripping nativity scenes I was telling you about, they're politicized nativity scenes for a reason. They say that they weren't refugees because they didn't flee from one country to the other, because they never left the Roman Empire. Give me a break. What does Matthew say? And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they, the wise men, departed to their own country by another way. But it goes on, the next verse. Now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, Rise, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you. For Herod, who was a politician's politician, Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him. And he, Joseph, rose and took the child and his mother by night and departed to Egypt and remained there until the death of Herod, end quote. They fled in fear from a king, the king of Judea, which was occupied territory, into Egypt, which was also occupied territory, but was also considered the personal domain of the empire. One empire, different provinces, principalities, and lesser powers, but powers nonetheless. Let no one tell you that Jesus, Mary, and Joseph were not refugees. They were displaced escapees, fugitives from political injustice and seekers of safety, according to Matthew, properly understood in historical context. The Holy Family was a mess then, even without the usual traditional nativity story to frame the dangerous, unjust time in which we live. Some people do condemn others for using a nativity scene to promote politics. People who apparently have never read or heard the Magnificat. Mary's song about the Messiah and her baby's destiny in Luke chapter 1. Mary sang in praise to God. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. That's political. What a mess the Holy Family was. In trouble and on the run back in the day, and still in the news 2,000 years later. Still in the news. Still inspiring new and different ways of seeing and understanding the poor and humble today, even and especially those being dragged off this country's streets today. You never know who God is going to use to change the world. You never know who God is going to use to change the world. It could be one of those dragged off the street. Nelson Mandela changed the world from a jail cell. It's never a big rich man that really changes anything. It's almost always a poor man or a woman or a poor girl whose name no one would otherwise remember. It's often someone whose name is not only lost to history, but ignored by it. Ignored by who? The big, rich, powerful men. Dear people of God, imagine Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus, baby Jesus, refugees all in cages. And may it ache your heart, disturb your mind, raise your voice, and inform your politics, which itself is a gift from God. Look for stranded Josephs and Marys and Jose's and Marias and be ready to love them and help them. Hide them, even, if you dare. It takes brave people, as brave as the Underground Railroad people. And not just now at Christmas time, but at all times. And if your Christmas is not planned out all picture perfect, or nobody's coming and you're on your own, if you and your family are not at peace, if everybody's stressed and freaking out and it's all a mess, just know that you're blessed. Just like Mary, Joseph, and Jesus in the first nativity scene. The first one, where God did a new thing. Be ready then. Find your hope. Find your peace. Find your joy. Find your love. Find Christ right here and out there. God may do another new thing with you.